Before we get started, there are some important people to thank and also some housekeeping notes for today. So first of all, we'd like to thank our panelists on today's call, you can see here, and our moderator, Mr. Warith Al-Farousi. We appreciate each of you, the time you've taken to update us during what must be a very busy time, and we look forward to hearing more in just a few minutes. Today's webinar is supported by Imagine Oman, which is part of a Safwa group of companies. They've helped us with the presentation, created a poll for today's event, smoothed out a few things technically, and we've learned a lot from them. These are features our team will certainly use in our future OABC Zoom events. So thank you, Imagine Oman, for being our media partner today. Now, before we begin, I'd like to thank the OABC's premium member companies. If we were really together in one place, this slide would go up on a rotating basis during our coffee break, and we would give these companies in our premium membership a lot of thanks and visibility throughout the session. Today, we don't have a networking coffee break, but if I can just draw our attention here for a moment before we move on, I always say that our premium members are like our sponsors, our annual sponsors. They really support the OABC in a major way. So this is our way of saying a word of thanks to you, especially during this difficult year, which has hit us all very hard, OABC included. Thanks for your constant support, for your encouragement, and for giving back. I know today all three of our panelists are actually premium members, so thank you for your time and thank you for your support. And now we're going to get into some housekeeping rules very briefly. First of all, today, you will be on mute for today's call. If you're listening to me as an attendee, you're on mute. But during the Q&A, you can raise your hand and ask a question with audio only. We will not be putting on video, but we will be able to hear your voice. The raise hand button is there. If at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a laptop, there's a participants tab, and if you click that, you'll see a small raise hand button. So I mean, you can kind of click raise hand and we'll see you, and our moderator, Mr. Warith, will call upon you, and then you will need to turn on your mic. If you do not want to do this and you prefer typing, that's fine. You can type questions in as we proceed with the session. You can put them in the Q&A box, also at the bottom of your screen, or in the chat, whatever you prefer. There is a good chance that today we will not get to every question, but we will try. And if you type them in, we can also get back to folks after the call is finished. And I think today we will end on time, but the panelists have agreed to kind of stay after if questions aren't answered before 3 o'clock. So that about does it with housekeeping. Without further ado, I am very proud to introduce our moderator for today's session. That's Mr. Warith Al-Farousi. He's a longtime member and a big supporter of the OABC, and he wears many hats. He's the chairman and CEO of the Safwa group of companies, as well as Imagine Technologies and Maharat Institute. As a board member of the Oman Logistics Association, Warith was the first person to come to mind when we looked for a moderator for today. I know he has a lot he wants to get to and bring out and highlight in today's session, so that is it from me. He will introduce our three panelists, so I'm handing over the floor now to Warith. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. I hope you're seeing me there. If not, it doesn't matter. We'll go through this. Anyway, I hope everybody is keeping safe and keeping your loved ones in a safe and healthy manner. It is very essential that each one of us actually protect ourselves from this nasty pandemic. And let's not underestimate, each one of us really need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves and the community and plus our organization. So that's the first thing that I'd like to open up with, and I'm sure each one of you are keeping safe out there. The second part is really, I would really thank the OABC to give me this chance to moderate this panel. I'm very honored. Today, I think, is the logistics update during and post-COVID. We want to know an insight from various organizations, what they have done during this pandemic. We know it's a big crisis, it's a global crisis, but nationally it's also a crisis, and everybody else has got crisis. So we need to find out how can we best manage this crisis through the difficult times. Today, really, we have a distinguished panelist and diversified panelist that is from the ports, from the couriers, and also if we can have the slide on the different the panelists, please. Can we see the slide? Yes. Mark is, as you probably know, he's the CEO of Port of Salalah. Port of Salalah is one of the biggest ports. It's a transshipment port for Oman. It's a gateway to Oman and, of course, globally. So it's a very important part of the supply chain for Oman. And no doubt, they have challenges during this pandemic. And what we will ask Mark and the others as well is that how do they manage and how did they respond on this pandemic? The second panelist, again, a country manager of DHL Express, Mr. Mustafa. Can we see Mustafa? Yeah, there you go. It's looking good. Probably lost a little bit of hair because of this pandemic. But apart from that, I mean, he's done an extremely good job in terms of keeping the couriers and everything else. And these are essential parts for us getting messages, packages, medicine, etc. In the supply chain into Oman, we need this. Also, we'll ask him about how he's responded, how did he keep those supply chains open during this pandemic. And last but not least, the GMM or GM manager, general manager of RA Logistics, Colin McKinley. There he goes. And as you know, he's very much in the contract logistics, very much for the oil and gas play. And that's also an essential part of our sector, which is the oil and gas production. And we'll also ask him how he has actually gone through this process and how he responded. So I will start, if you don't mind, with sharing a small process that most of organizations or professional organizations handle such pandemics. So maybe if you can go through that process there, slide. Yeah, there you go. Great, thanks for that. Anyway, what I put up here is what I'd like to share with each one of you, is that a lot of organizations or people or communities or countries, when there's a pandemic like this and a crisis that happens, the first thing they need to have is to ensure that their business is sustainable, yeah? Once that has been done, they have set up their crisis team, look what they need to sustain the business. That, of course, like everything else, you need to take assessment of it and say, is our business sustainable? Can it go forward? Once you decide that, once you put up your sort of crisis team, then you can start thinking about how do I continue the operations and continuity, and what are the skeleton operations that I have to keep on going to enable the organization or community not to be disrupted by this pandemic. Once that is stabilized and things are moving on, then you have to make sure that your brand reputation is contained. Brand reputation is a big thing, as you know now, is that if there is a crisis, each and every communities or countries or people want to know that their people are protected and safe, and they can continue in such a crisis in a way that protects them and their families too. So it's very important that how you will react on a crisis will enable that brand to be highlighted, and how it's responding will actually give it a big mileage, and how they actually reacted, how they did it well, how do they keep the supply chains open, and because everybody is dependent on that brand. For instance, like Port of Salalah, you can't close the operations just because there is a pandemic, or you can't stop the couriers coming into the houses, etc., and so forth, that the oil and gas operations need to run. So all these things have to be taken care of, and that is when you put your brand up front and say, hey, there is a pandemic, but I'm here, I'm ready to go. And then the last but not least, when everything is stabilized, you look at the business reassessment and the opportunities, then you go out of the crisis. We're still not out of the crisis right now, as you know. We've been having almost 1,400 people testing positive yesterday. So this is actually going to get even worse before it gets better. So let's not underestimate what we're going through. It's been 3 or 4 months lockdowns now, but people are starting to get back to work. But this is the time not for us to relax, but basically we have to keep ourselves very much alert and whatever we're doing. So protection of the individual, protection of the company, protection of the communities is key for all of us to know. So let's comply to the guidelines of the COVID-19. They are not there just for the sake of it, but there to protect us. So without a further ado, I would like to start asking a couple of questions to our panelists. And I'll start with Mark, if you don't mind, Mark. So yes. If you can come, yeah. Thank you, Mark. Mark, so when this pandemic was announced and when you heard about it, can you just give us what you went through as an organization and how did you systematically try to do and respond to that pandemic?
Yeah, thanks, Worth. Great question, obviously very relevant. And I think, you know, the difference with what we've gone through now compared to previous crises, I mean, in our own case in Port of Salalah 2 years ago, many may know we had a cyclone that hit us. And of course, you know, that's a bit of a more predefined event in that, you know, it's going to be there, but it's going to be over at a certain point as well. And this one was very different because we never had gone through something like this in terms of a global pandemic. So it was very much the undefined. However, of course, we all still have our business continuity plans. You know, a lot of us are part of much wider, bigger organizations. So you have a lot to draw on in that sense as well, to get a bit of experience, etc. So you have a lot of, let's say, documents and drills that you've done, but you never quite know, right, in terms of how to deal with something like that. So what we felt it was very important to do, and of course, we're still in the middle of it, as you rightfully mentioned now as well. What worked very well for us, I'm not going to focus too much on the business continuity plan itself, because that, you know, it's pretty much, I guess, what everyone else has, let's say, you know, gone through in terms of the right measures that you have to take, protecting the supply chain and these kinds of things. But it's more, I suppose, maybe the leadership angle, which I think is very crucial here, is that what we made sure we did, and this we also got a little bit of guidance on from others, quite frankly, because of course, like I said, we do have the ability to tap into a global organization as well. And it was to establish the right priorities. And it was also to make sure that those were very well communicated, most particularly and most important is to your employees. I mean, they want to know what's going on. So what we did through the process very early on, establish our priorities, which was number one, safety of employees and safety of port users. The second one was continuity of the supply chain, which was very important. And then the third one was maintain a sustainable business. So I'll just touch upon those because I think it's important to share, let's say. So firstly, you want to make sure that your employees are feeling safe. No one knows what's going on, including your leadership team. It's an undetermined event. It's something that hasn't happened before. So what you have to do is make sure that people are, let's say, made to feel safe. So what we did in our particular case, we established a committee and we met daily. When I say met, we met online daily because, of course, I myself actually was traveling at the time, unable to return. So that made me feel in touch with the team. And I think that felt everyone, you know, feel same part of like you're all in this together, let's say. And we made sure this was well communicated to everybody. So the message went out, we're doing what we can. And of course, from that, then people knew the right things to do. So the PPE orders, for example, those ones flowed from that meeting. Determining the social distancing that we had to put into the offices, that one flowed from that one. Ultimately, the work from home mechanisms that we put in place flowed from that one as well. So it wasn't one person who was making a decision, it was a select committee, let's say, that represented cross-functional departments from the business. And of course, our business is a big one, so you need to make sure people are engaged. So that worked very well. And once we felt that one was, let's say, you know, well under control and people felt, let's say, reassured as well, we then made sure that the communication in terms of the second priority was very well felt. And that was ensuring the supply chain is maintained. And the message going to our people, because of course, You had a lot, for example, of the frontline workers, of the shift workers, the guys driving the cranes and operating the various, pieces of equipment that make the port run. At the end of the day, those guys are way more important than the likes of me and the management team, because these guys are getting the things done. So we had to make sure they understood their role, gave them a sense of purpose. And that was very much around supply chain is crucial right now because the world is in turmoil, and you never know what that container that you're busy taking off the ship or putting back on a ship. It could be vital, medical supplies, for example, that need to get to a part of the world that might need it. So that gave people a sense of purpose and made people really rally behind the importance, especially of a hub port as well, because you're not affecting just one country's economy, you're affecting multiple countries' economies as well. So that worked very well for us. And that gave, like I said, people a sense of purpose. And then, once we got more into it, let's say, then we made sure we touched upon the third priority, which is, of course, then maintaining a financially sound business. Because, of course, without that in place, then, you're ultimately not going to be able to survive. But I mean, very much what I mean by that is you're making sure your suppliers are paid, not just about the return you're giving your shareholders. You're making sure that your suppliers are paid. You're making sure, of course, your employees are getting paid as well. So these are very important, and that worked very well for us. And that continues to be our guiding principles now. And I think the key with a lot of these things is to keep it as simple as possible so people understand. And when you're in a situation where you need to make a decision, well, my decision making is that much easier when I have these principles, let's say, to choose from. That very much has been something that has worked for us. And, it's good to get the opportunity to share because, hopefully that could, let's say, guide others as well. But I cannot I cannot overstate it enough, is that you have to make sure your employees are firstly safe, but also know that they're safe and they're being looked after.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. That's pretty sort of insightful, how Salah already put it in. And I'm glad to hear that it's the people in the end of the day that we have to keep safe, also keep informed. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. So maybe now I go to Mustafa, and what I'd like to ask you, Mustafa, similar response, but I'm sure you are working in a different way. You are more the supply line, so people can communicate through documents, packaging, medicine, and various other supply chains. That DHL, as we know, is an organization that enables to go with your businesses day in, day out. Also during this pandemic, it is very crucially because you do the last mile delivery, you have the contact with the consumers directly. So can you just give us a little bit of a feel about how you had to go about it? And with this pandemic, which actually threatens people, and you as an organization are in contact with them throughout.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, thank you very much, Wes, and thanks for the opportunity to give an update about the logistics and more specific about DHL in Oman. Like everyone else, I mean, like Mark mentioned rightly, it's, facing this unprecedented situation, we should have adjusted actually, or we should adjust to the circumstances. So again, we are a business that is powered by people. And our people actually are the main assets that we have in the organization. So we had to make sure that the safety of our people and the safety of our customers are maintained as a top priority. Especially as you rightly mentioned, that we are interacting with customers daily, and we're interacting with at least 2,000 to 2,500 customers a day while delivering our shipments or picking up our parcels. So safety was key for us, and it was the first and foremost the kind of top priority. The second priority for us is, again, the service continuity. We are perceived, or we are seen as a mandatory service or as an essential service into the market and globally as well. So the continuity of the service was key for us because we had to make sure, as you rightly said, delivering the medical supplies, the medicines, the important documents, the parcels, but also those people that are doing online shopping actually to be able to deliver their stuff to the doorstep and without exposing them to any kind of risk. And again, the third thing was actually the business continuity in terms of our day-to-day money, cash, financial status, and all these kind of things. again, it was for us the main challenge, or the main plan was to change the mindset of our people, because other than the operational changes that we do in order to meet this kind of pandemic or this kind of unprecedented situation, it was more about the mindset shift of the people. Our vans will be regularly sanitized. Our facility will be sanitized. Sometimes our shipments and our packages that are received from outside also are sanitized. Every van will be equipped with a COVID-19 kit, including gloves, masks, sanitizers, and everything. But it was not only this that it was required, it was also the mindset shift of our people and the way they are dealing with the customers on a daily basis. So we have done a lot of work on that one. It's a big change for our people, and it was taking a long time to basically get them up and running with this new mindset. The other thing is our customers, as you said, right? So we are delivering more than 3,000 shipments a day to 3,000 customers in different places of the Sultanate of Oman. And for us, the priority was to deliver the shipments to the doorstep without exposing the customers to go outside, especially during the severe lockdown and during the peak of this pandemic in Oman. So it was for us more of stay at home, we are delivering to you. And this was the key things these are the key things that we were working on. So it's all about safety, but also it's about how we are adapting and being flexible to meet those kind of unprecedented situations in Oman while keeping the business running and the service up.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. Again, I think that was very insightful as well. And a lot of what I hear throughout this is about the people and the contact and your customers, how you interface with them, and how what you've done towards that. So thank you for giving that insightful information, Mustafa. Now I'd like to turn to Colin. Colin has been a veteran here in Oman, so probably he's also had the experience of dealing with what do you call this, a GONO in 2007. That was some time ago, and we had a huge crisis then. Colin, can you give us a little bit of your insight to your organization, how it actually responded to this pandemic this time round, and what was learned initially, and what have we learned today?
Thank you, Warith. Listen, thank you again for being part of this. Great for this to be put together. I think for us, I think it is reacting quickly to the situation, and of course, similar to Mark, and I think Mustafa, for us, checking to make sure the staff and the families are okay, and they know working from home becomes a normality, and we can continue with the business, of course. For us too, that because we serve the length and breadth of Oman, checking to make sure the suppliers are well positioned to continue to support the business, or we're aware of any challenges or issues that they face. Equally, because we're so involved in all the international business that comes from overseas, and the relationships we have with the agents overseas is being close enough to the agents, so we really do, we are aware of where we stand and continue the shipments to move by air and by sea, and of course the obvious impact it's had on the ocean carriers and air freight too. And I say the fourth thing, last but certainly not least, for us is maintaining a very close relationship with our clients, without which we wouldn't have a business. And whilst of course COVID-19 has had an impact, it's not really affected us quite as much as perhaps that we thought it might have done. We've been very fortunate in that sense, and it could be too because our customer base is quite diverse. I think for us, it's being close enough to the customers so that we really understand their needs in this crisis, because they still need the shipments to continue to come in, and it's for us to make sure that we are well versed and we fully understand how we continue to serve that business in the best way possible. And of course, for us, it's as being resilient in this process, and for us and the rest of the staff members. And I think the staff adapted very well, because having been part of some of the challenges we've seen in the past, as I say, we learn to become resilient, and we think out the box to find a new solution. So I think we've coped pretty well given the circumstances, staying as close as we can to the clients in the process.
Thank you. Colin, again, very, very insightful. Here, understanding your customers has been key, which is, of course, the communication. You had to establish different communications means. Can you just give us a quick over that? How did you actually keep close to your customers while the thing was to stay home, stay safe, protect yourselves? How did you do that?
I think the important thing is that, we rely on email and IT technology to be able to communicate with our clients. And really that really continued in the same way. But to pick up the part that Mark made reference to, for me, we sometimes overcomplicate the business, but for us, keep it simple. Yes, keep it simple. Are we close enough to the clients? Do we really understand their needs? Can we work in advance of what's going on with the shipments so that we're not reactive, but we're working in a proactive way? So things really didn't change in the most part, but I think an important part that Oman Logistics Association also played was that we moved, for example, to a paperless delivery order with all the carriers in Oman. And this was a very important step where people are not coming into contact with each other. We're relying on e-technology to support this. And this was also endorsed by the Ministry of Transport too. So many people behind the scenes play an important part to help us cope in the new business environment.
Thank you, Colin. I'm very touched by the mention of Oman Logistics Association and Ministry of Transport coming into the pandemic to enable people to have an easy flow. So I'm very excited to hear that Oman Logistics Association is starting to function in the way it's supposed to be, the voice for the industry, and at the same time has enabled you to work with your operations and give you the access necessary. So I also understand the Ministry of Commerce and Industry was very much behind everybody else. They listed down all the logistics organizations that need to keep the business going. So I think those were essential. And if I may just say, I believe that Oman had responded in a right way. And I feel that none of us, and I'm sure all the audience as well, have not felt there's a food shortages in the market, supermarket, or wherever. So I think that particular part in Oman, I think they survived it very well. They did very well. And it's only because there were some links and communications and also the framework to keep the business going during a crisis like this. So fantastic, Colin. Now, what I'll do before I wrap up, I'll just go around to each one of you as panelists. I will start with Mark again, just come back to you, Colin. Mark, what did you, like any disasters, there's always some opportunities. So what from this disaster did we learn, maybe a new practice or whatever, that you will continue doing even after the pandemic?
Yeah, great question, Warith. And I think, the old saying goes is that don't let a good crisis, go to waste, I suppose, in that sense as well. I mean, we're not through it yet, but as I mentioned before, we do have to take a lot of lessons. And what we've done at Port of Salalah is that we had a digitalization strategy, which we were busy developing in any case, kind of a renewed one, let's say, because we felt, let's say, that too many of the offerings we were giving were not digital enough. And I think this has been the major learning for us, is that what we need to do, we have to digitalize our services a lot more, particularly when it comes to customer-facing initiatives. And that's very much what we've done. So we've formed a team, let's say again, and the focus is on prioritizing the right initiatives that actually make a difference for the customer. And quite frankly, a lot of it is safety behind it in that sense as well. Because you want to avoid, through this pandemic, of course, you want to avoid the human-to-human contact as far as possible. So therefore, there's many things, let's say, that can be done. And I'll give a great example of one, actually, is that one thing we had been quite heavily behind on is blockchain technology as well, which I think many people might be aware of as well. And it is something that it doesn't give any there's no competitive barriers in that sense as well. The more, quite frankly, the more players that are in it, the better it is for everybody. So that's something we were promoting, but we started promoting a lot more. And I'm very happy to say that we've had a very strong engagement with customs in the last couple of weeks, actually, and that has led to more momentum with it as well, which ultimately is going to be benefiting the entire industry, in my view, quite frankly. And I think, not just, let's say, ports, when I talk about that, I'm talking about shipping in general, because, of course, you're simplifying things a lot more. You're avoiding, let's say, too many transactions and too many unnecessary steps in a very complex supply chain. So I come back to that point, which I like very much, which Colin mentioned as well, about keeping things simple as possible. And it seems almost counterintuitive to say you're going to technology to make it simple, but it's what the customer feels. At the end of the day, it's his feeling about how things go that makes the difference. And, as an overall thing, let's say, to answer your question, I suppose, more directly, is that we've embraced this a lot more. Very early stages, let's say, we have a lot more to go. But I mean, our team, our IT team as well, where possible, we're doing in-house. Where not possible, we're bringing in external support. But at the moment, the focus is around the customer facing. And, once that, let's say, we feel we've got a better grip on it, we're then focusing more on our internal processes as well, how we make that, let's say, a lot more efficient through embracing technology. And I think this is probably, I have a feeling I might be speaking. I haven't had too many discussions with others because obviously logistics dictates at the moment that's a bit more challenging. But I believe that it's probably going to be across, multiple businesses. This will be really the way to go. And I think ultimately what we emerge into after this crisis will be a new normal that was used before. And I think a lot of that new normal is going to be very much more the embracing of digital, quite frankly, as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. I think it's also touched a very important point. That lucky part is that, as you probably know, Bayan system, which is the technology for the customs, etc. I think without that Bayan system being put in play in the last couple of years or so, or maybe 3-4 years now, and going paperless in many things like that, I think that's enabled us to contain this pandemic a lot better. Because had it been paper-based, as you remember, I don't know, Mark, you may not know, but if I ask Colin, when we were doing custom clearances here about 5 years ago, we had to go from one window to another with a paper. So you keep on pushing that paper from one place to the next. So that was people intensive, and the process was cumbersome, not simple. Now you can do all your Bayan clearance, which is Bayan is the actually customs system here in Oman. And you can do it online, and you can be like now, I can get on here and ask for my import license and get different things. So I think that journey that Oman had been taking the last 10 years or so, I think now there's fruits of it. And this pandemic, I'm sure we will not be able to have gone through as simple as this at this moment in time. And if we didn't have this technology. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. If anything, we've accelerated. And I think there are many good things like what we have today. We will keep the teleconferencing. Like we are a lot closer to you now in Salalah. In the old days, we have to get people from Salalah to Muscat, but you are there now, and you responded to this webinar. Thank you very much, Mark. So let us now go to Mustafa. What did you find from this pandemic as an opportunity that you may want to accelerate or do or keep?
Well, okay, thanks, Waris. I think, yeah, that's a great question again. And as mentioned by Mark, and I think everyone agreeing, I mean, digitalization is the key. And for us in DHL globally, I mean, our strategy is the top #1 priority is actually the digitalization word. And in this pandemic, we've seen that actually there is a more use of, or there is a requirement for actually more technology and less physical interactions. And this is what we have been happy about, because we have already started our investments in the digitalization a couple of years ago. So, I mean, during this pandemic, we've been able to prove that this works. And I'll give you a little example. I mean, 50% of our organization here in Oman, and actually I would say even regionally or even globally, we're working from home, maintaining a full call center, talking about Oman receiving more than 4,000 calls a day while they're staying at home. So I think as we move on, we will need to be more connectedness. We would need more connectedness in the world of our daily business and day-to-day business. We need more IT, of course. We need more technology, not less. This is the way actually we will need to move forward, and it has proven its efficiency, I would say. As you mentioned as well about the Bayan systems and the custom systems, yes, they've done a great job in terms of the automation. What we've done even more with them in partnership with the customs team and the directorate of the customs is that now we have a full working on a project for full integration of our clearance system, since we're working with lots of volume per day. So our clearance is happening really as a back-to-back integration with the customs department. So we don't need anymore to go to the Bayan systems ourselves. It's really auto happening, where the transfer of data on the back end, which actually gives us big advantage, and to our customers as well. So of course IT and of course technology, but also there is one more thing, which is the flexibility and the quick adaptability to the situations. Again, the COVID-19 was an unprecedented. We've not seen this before, not during our life, I would say. But I think that if there is one lesson for all of us, is the quick adaptation and flexibility. And as also mentioned by Mark, is that the leadership plays a big role in actually keeping the team and keeping the business continuing, because we need to be available and we need to be honest with our team, explaining them what's going on and give them a fair view of the business, but also, you know, being open and being flexible and available. We cannot lead a team while, you know, we're staying at home while our operations are delivering every day. So I think 3 things to wrap it up from my side: technology, more not less, you know, leadership really to play a big role, and the adaptability and more flexibility to be required moving forward.
Fantastic, Mustafa. I think that's a good, almost a wrap up, which, as you said, summarize them in a very nice way. Before, I think I've got another sort of 3-4 minutes. We'll give a little bit of floor to Colin, and then we'll do a bit of wrap up. And then we'll go to some questions that I've seen some audiences here have already been asking. So please, if you've got any questions, this is the time to start asking them. Right, Colin, you have the last word.
Warren, thank you very much. I think what's important probably to say, if we look at this from a forwarding point of view, and whilst I've said that COVID-19 has not had such a dramatic impact on their business, it has for sure on the industry. Globally, it's a crisis that we've never faced before. Gonu and the other cyclones and what else has gone on has not done to our business what we face today. And I say for the forwarding community, they're going to have to think long and hard and find some smarter ways of doing business. And what I mean by that is that, you know, looking at ways to increase productivity, looking at new efficiencies in their business, looking at perhaps technologies that Mustafa makes reference to. I think it's fair to say that rates in our industry are at an all-time low, and they're already not sustainable as far as I'm concerned. And the market conditions suggest that that will continue to drive south, and that's not healthy for the business. Whilst at the same time, clients look to find new savings. Clients look for us to extend the payment terms even further in an environment where getting paid on time is a challenge, for many of us. So I think for the forwarding community, you need to look at taking proper control of your business. For me, it's still simple. It's all about operations. It's all about sales. It's all about finance for your people and what you do with it. And of course, without our clients, we're nowhere. So it's very important that we really are close to the clients. We really do understand their needs. But the analogy I often make to the forwarding industry and the service that we provide is it's like the car that you drive. You need to ask yourself, which car is it that you want to drive? Are we going to Marbella to put some car spares together, and that's the means of transport? Or do we want to invest a bit more so that we have something more reliable, that can be sustained? And I think that's a tough question for clients too, but it's up to the forwarding community, I feel, to drive our clients towards going for something that is reliable, that is sustainable, and the rates levels do allow us to deliver the service as we go forward in this challenge. And I think That sums it up for me.
Thank you very much, Colin. I knew if I give you the last one, it would be too many words. Anyway, no worries. We've gained quite a lot there. Anyway, just as a wrap up, I think what I hear from everybody and the takeaways. I think the takeaway here is the leadership during this pandemic crisis is essentially to keep the business running, sustainable, keep the brand reputation, and then, of course, pick up the opportunities that come through. I also hear that technology is a big player, and if anything, it's going to have to accelerate in this. And I think this is where maybe one of the biggest opportunities all of us are going through, is that whatever technologies we've applied and accelerated will be remaining for us, and probably keep it simple, but get better productivity out of these technologies we put it in now. Also, I think what you said also, gentlemen, the panelists, quite clearly, you said adaptability. Nobody knew how to respond to this crisis, but very, very quickly, if people do adapt, and people, this is the kind of talents that are required today, is a good leadership, and people that can adapt to different technologies, different circumstances, different ways of doing business. So really, I mean, today it's come out quite well. Thank you, the panelists, for the very insightful discussions. I'd like to thank the audience, which of course we're going to start taking questions right now, because without you guys, it's not for us, it's very much for the audience here. So I think we're about time now, we can go to the questions, and I've got a couple of questions over here. I think if I'm not, you know, I think this is a good time to open up for questions. We've got almost like 15 minutes or so, or 10 minutes or so to tackle some questions. And then I think we'll do a wrap up just before 3 o'clock. Otherwise, Rebecca will keep on flashing cards on me, maybe red cards and stuff. So anyway, let us, without further ado, we have the first question here from Ibrahim Al-Husni. Ibrahim, can you hear me? Could you put him on, please? Maybe his mic is... Ibrahim, you're still there with us? Okay, if he's not around, then we'll go to Saif Hamoud, if you don't mind.
You know what, Warith, sorry to bounce back in. I kind of offered people the chance, if they were shy and didn't want to do audio, they can just ask in text. So let's just address the question and hopefully he can hear. He just, maybe he can't turn on his audio. Okay.
Right. We've lost Ibrahim here. We must have feared him. Anyway, Saif Hamoud, this question is asked, do you think that this crisis will lead Oman to be a hub for logistics for the whole area, and how to ensure to achieve it? That's what we've got. Saif, is that the question? Now, I don't know who will take that question. Mark, since you are one of the big ports here, maybe strategic important.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think to an extent is that you know, you're speaking to somebody obviously from a hub port already. So I believe that we are a hub. We are a hub for logistics. I believe that a lot more can be done. I think that we need to exploit our geographical position, which is very unique in that sense, of course, as well. And again, I'm you know, a bit alluding towards Salalah itself, because I think we have a very, very special position. There's a lot of value, let's say, that our customers derive from that as well. But we need to make sure that we respond to our customers' needs and demands, quite frankly. And when I say we, I mean all of us collectively, because there are a lot of opportunities out there for the customers. There are a lot of options as well. And if we're not on top of our game in terms of making sure we're offering the solutions they require, then it simply won't happen, you know, quite frankly. So I think, you know, we may be 30–40% there if you want to put it in percentage terms, but to get to 100%, we need to make sure that we maintain focus on what the customer actually needs. And I think through this crisis, we've realized customer needs are changing as well. And that's a very important point. We need to, you know, make sure that we're dynamic in terms of the solutions we can offer.
Fantastic. And I will also try to add on to that, Mark, is that during this pandemic, in fact, Oman actually demonstrated to be the hub for the gateway to the other GCC states. For example, in terms of food security, I understand we did a lot of re-export. We quickly responded to the pandemic by asking a lot of our friends, from India and the region to bring in supplies. And also some of our GCC partners and GCC states have been actually taking on a regular basis, coming to Oman to pick up the supplies. So I think in that way, and we've been adapting faster, as you said, a lot can be done, but this pandemic has actually enabled Oman to leverage its strategic positioning. And hopefully, as you said, let's go faster and better.
Yeah, I'll just add something if you don't mind, Warith. I think that if you look at, a lot of the vision of the government in the last couple of years in terms of the infrastructure that has been developed, it really is top world class, in that sense as well. There's been a lot of focus behind it and a lot of around the vision of 2040, etc. And I think that the return on that investment and that vision still has to be realized. And I think that we need to, commend the leadership and the visionaries that have led this country for the last couple of years. And now I think we also need to, find and exploit those opportunities, quite frankly, to take that vision more into reality, into realization.
Thank you very much.
So, yeah, if you may, Waris, I just wanted to add a little. I know we are running out of time, but I mean, this is such an important subject, and I think, yes, I mean, Oman has a great opportunity to become really a hub and more of a logistics gateway, actually, to, geographically speaking and size-wise, and I mean, they've got all the opportunities. And I think, as mentioned by Mark as well, I think the government has done a great job in the last 2 years talking about transforming and putting the right infrastructures. I just wanted to mention that actually, as DHL, I mean, we're a global player, and we also believe on that, and we believe on that with actions on the ground, I would say. So actually, as we speak today, DHL is in Oman is acting as a hub for 4 different countries across the GCC, and actually even more than that. So we are actually a mini hub for doing sorting of the shipments. We are transiting the shipments through Oman, which is a very good first step actually to the next level of having Oman as a hub. The second thing that we're doing is we are investing actually on the long term in Oman airport, and as we speak now, we should be seeing DHL in the airport, in the Muscat International Airport. In a matter of 2 to 3 years, we are working on having a big facility of more than 15,000 square meters, which will actually be positioned as a hub for DHL, an additional hub for DHL in Oman, where we will be serving more countries and more routes. So I'm just very much interested and very much excited about this, because I think it's really going in line with the government vision, and we're very happy that we are working on the same direction. And this project has been signed off last year, just signed end of 2019, and we will be seeing, of course, more aeroplanes and more hubs from an air freight and air courier perspective coming here through Oman. So I think it's a very good opportunity for everyone.
Thank you, Mustafa. Let's take one more question before we close. This is a very important one, actually. We'll take this question and then we'll think about wrapping up. How can blockchain or other technologies allow for quicker customs clearance and personnel immigration by verifying manifest in advance of arrival? If I've got that correctly, it's from an anonymous attendee, so I don't know who that person is, but it's a very relevant question. Maybe we can ask, maybe DHL would probably be a better person. I'm sure you are a global team, and you may be applying some of these technologies. Are you applying any technologies such as blockchain in your global supply chains? I'm asking maybe an obvious question, but I'd like to ask.
Oh, I mean, I would like to. It's a very good question, and I would like maybe to elaborate more on what really we are doing, right? So first of all, DHL is clearing, I would say, more than 90% of the shipments before arrival when it's on air, and this is due to the great connectivity between the origin customs and DHL and the destination customs. So as I mentioned previously in a few minutes ago, is that we have a great integration system with the customs departments, whether here or whether across the world. Again, we are available in 220 countries, and almost every country we are really integrated with the customs. So to answer more directly the question, we've got 90% of the shipments being cleared before arrival. So when it arrives, really, it's a matter of whether it requires a physical inspection or it requires a ministry approval or anything else. Other than that, if it's a quick quick and speedy kind of clearance without any approvals, then it will go quickly and we will be able to deliver on the same day. So technology is key for that, because this is what integrates or what links together the data from origin from the shipper to the destination customs to enable actually a faster customs clearance. So technology is key.
Thank you. I think we've come out almost, we've got another 4 minutes, so I'm going to give a bit more time to Rebecca to probably wrap it up. There's a lot more questions, I'm sure. Pick up a few, maybe we can also respond after this session. Sorry, I can hear something, guy.
Sorry,
Okay.
Worth, I think it's because I unmuted my mic and then there was some feedback. But how about we put up the last slide with the events, I close, and then we can continue the Q&A after I kind of do the closing remarks. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
So put that slide up. For now, I just wanted to say thank you from the OABC to each of you, Mark, Colin, Mustafa, and Warith, of course. I mean, it's been a busy time. We've been doing a lot of things that we've been talking about today, and to take the time out and address us all is really important, and we're thankful. So thanks for doing that. Now, we've got some events that are going to be pulled up now on a slide that I just wanted to mention before people start to go who might have appointments now. We have a number of things happening even though it's summer. Now, typically the OABC team gets quiet in summer, but doesn't seem that most of us are going anywhere right now. So we're staying busy and hosting more events. There is a speed networking event coming up. This is a very fast-paced event with these Zoom breakout rooms. So basically, we will do one-on-one meetings and move you room to room so you can meet each other and other executives in that environment online. And there's also another logistics event. That's important to speak about. Mark, you're going to be there again, I think, with us, with the U.S. Embassy and ITHRA. This is kind of a partnership to discuss more on the investment and opportunity side of things. Then today was more of a practical, what have you been doing, how have you been coping, and what changes have happened, but this is specifically around aviation and ports investment opportunities in Oman. There's already around 40 or 50 US companies signing in from the United States, and so we hope you can join us for that. All of these events are on our website, and that's kind of it from my side. I think if people do have appointments, they can go, and with our thanks for coming, and otherwise we can just continue with the Q&A if that's fine with the panelists. Thank you.
Shall we, I think we have 49 attendees now, still here with us. So we can take some more questions for the next 10-15 minutes. All right, okay. Then let me just look some of these questions and then we'll discuss them. Right, Q&A, we got, okay. We have Sunil Joseph. Will he like to go live? Will he like to okay, I think we said let's just take the questions. The question here is, how has pandemic impacted the cost of courier industry, and how do you expect this going forward post-pandemic? I would imagine this is for Mustafa.
Okay, so thanks, Waris, and thanks, Sunil. Very good question. Again, of course, cost has been impacted, but what we have been able to do is to maintain the price or the cost price to the customer, right? We did not see an increase from our side to the rates that are being available in the market as well. On the other hand, yes, the cost has been increased with an increased airline cost. I mean, we are handling our own DHL aviation globally. there is an increase on the cost of aviation, there is an increase on the cost of deliveries, increase in the cost of resources. With the increase of the volume, we have been, with the increase of the volume of more of an e-commerce volume coming on from the big, e-commerces globally, this has increased the volume and hence has increased the cost of delivery and the cost of operation. So yes, it's been increased, of course, it's been impacted, but what we do is that at the end of the day, we have to ensure that customer services continues and with the right price in the market. Certain lanes, of course, have been impacted. If we talk about China, if we talk about where there is a little bit big capacity, a big demand and low capacity, yes, of course. I mean, and of course, Colin would agree with me, and especially from the China, it's been a little bit of a big challenge over the last couple of weeks or the last months or so. So yeah, cost is increased. Of course, it will still be impacted for some time until it actually reaches a kind of stability. And we hope that we were not in a forced in a position where we have to increase the prices in the market.
Great. Now let's take another question. This is by Amina. Do you face late payment issues, and how do you deal with them? Maybe we can ask Colin this question, because I think it's more like payments and...
I think this is a subject that's very close to our hearts, and for sure it is a big challenge, not just in Oman, but in the region. And we see that potentially it will continue to be an even greater issue. I think there are a number of ways, to best protect yourselves in something like this. But I think going into any business deal, I think we have to be prudent. I think there has to be an element of trust between the client and the customer. And I think in some cases, we have to take steps to protect ourselves, because at a time when not getting paid almost becomes the norm, it can have a huge detrimental impact on anyone's business. And like I say, there are a number of ways of dealing with it, but it's a problem that I don't think will go away. And I think it takes getting a few clever heads together and sitting around and discussing where you are going into the business deal to determine whether you protect yourself first and foremost to avoid any exposure in the event of any delay at the back end.
Thank you. So let's take another one now from Hussein Isa here. What he's saying is that, would you recommend that colleges offer supply chain and logistics programs to Omani students to prepare graduates for the career and industry in the future? What skills do college students need to develop this industry? Now, okay, great. Maybe we can have a live question here. Are you prepared, you're saying, to
yes.
give us a live,
yes.
yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, you
nice.
Can I get a quick response to the first part of the first question, if you've heard it? Like a raise of hand between four of you, you're experts in my opinion in this field. Would you recommend colleges to offer supply chain logistics programs? Raise of hands, please. Do you agree?
Yep.
All of you agree? Okay. What skills do college students need to develop in this industry, in your opinion? Like what else? I know these are a broad type of questions, and probably if I was an applicant right now, and I know there's a shortage, there's quite a shortage here in Oman in the skilled labor in the supply chain. I've read a couple of papers that talked about that, but correct me please if I'm wrong. And that I know that the multinational firms are having to comply with Omanization in Oman. There's that Vision 2040 plans to diversify into logistics industry. There's initiatives from Oman government also to develop various projects like the railway, the Khazan logistics city, Dokum port, the Soha shipping complex. All these initiatives,
Okay.
the vision,
I think
the Omanization point to that direction. What would you?
Yeah. Hussein, first of all, fantastic question. I think it's very relevant. And also, it's good to have an understanding of the landscape of training in Oman. First of all, I think you said whether colleges are to offer supply chain. I would say that quite a number of colleges already in Oman do
Yes.
offer supply chain programs. People like National University, the Muscat University, Geotech, Middle East College, Sohar College, quite a number of colleges actually, even in the interior colleges, they have actually a lot of programs on supply chain. So I think the diversity of colleges in Oman, there is quite a lot being offered. Also, you said something about what skills does college students need to develop. I think in today's world, by the time you say what skills they have to do, they already are dated. So I believe that, and also what COVID has shown us, that we have to adapt a lot faster. So what skills do we give our students so that they can adapt well, learn new skills? So to me, the first thing is really giving them empowerment, that whatever they've learned, they are able to do, and give them the leadership thinking, you know, that they can be creative. So today's skills are, how can you create? How can you problem solve, etc. Because nobody knows what the problems are. Because like this pandemic, if you ask the whole world now, do they know how to resolve it? Nobody can. But what they can do is actually be adaptive, be a little bit of a problem solver, be creative with solutions, etc. So these are the skills of the future. And no doubt, even today, when we were talking with the panelists, every panelist said leadership is important. So any college student has to have those cognitive skills of leadership, relationship management, people management, and it's all about people in the end of the day. So to me, the most important part is that what we call is mindset switch from instruction-based learning to problem-solved learning. So this is something that I would recommend that each college student look at it, and the colleges and institutes have to provide those programs that these students can be adaptive to any environment which they've been thrown into. So that's probably a long-winded answer, but I believe that gives you a bit more of a roundscape. So before further ado, Hussein, I hope we've answered you.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Then can we take one more question? What's happening here? Are we okay? Shall we take one more question? This is also quite good. Saif Hamoud is asking, are there any collaborative strategies between all parties to align all the efforts to enhance the logistics sector? Maybe that's a good one for Mark. Mark, if you don't mind, would you like to take this up?
Yeah, more than happy to. And in fact, it's a very relevant question, and I think it's a good question. And perhaps some of the other panelists, this might maybe resonate with you as well. Is that I think, you know, especially over probably the last 5 to 10 years, I think the role, and I'm talking obviously as a ports personnel, but obviously heavily involved in, you know, the logistics sector. So I'll speak from experience, but I think there might be overlap, let's say, with the other, you know, elements of the supply chain that goes on. Is that I think, you know, people used to think in my sector before very singularly in terms of we're ports and we just do a certain aspect of the supply chain. We just move containers often on ships, and in some cases back onto ships, and then, you know, in some cases the Garda Gate, etc., to service the local market. But I think a lot of the changes are happening whereby our customers are demanding more integrated solutions in terms of you know, how things happen. And I know a lot has been spoken about this, but you're really seeing it start to happen now, whereby there's a lot more partnering within the industry in terms of your partners, your customers even, whereby you're looking for these solutions and you identifying the parts of the supply chain that the ultimate customer, so before, I'll give an example, before I used to think in terms of my customer, in my particular case, being a shipping line. Now I don't think so much in those terms anymore. I think about more the beneficiary owner of the cargo, the one that's going to, let's say, receive the cargo at the end of the day, which makes me, if I have a different dimension of thinking, it helps me to then find solutions for that person, as opposed to just the one who's more my partner, as opposed to just my customer. So I think this is a lot of the difference of changing in terms of the way things are going, and will continue to change. And the ones that don't adapt will probably be the ones that don't win as much in the situation. In terms of operating these much more integrated solutions, as opposed to just thinking about things in very small segments, let's say. And I think this is really the world that we're moving into, probably post-COVID, even more so, would be my, my feeling, quite frankly.
Thank you for that, Mark. And there's actually not a question, but in the chat lines, I see a student saying that will there be internships in this pandemic summer? So my simple answer is that we don't stop. We have to continue. So the old way of internship, you have to go to the office. But if you're willing to have an internship from back your home, why not? Because we're doing this now, and you're here on this webinar today. So this is a learning for you. So you can learn maybe and attach yourself to another organization too. So what I would like to call is that organizations are also to think about internship maybe through remote learning or remote working. Okay, I think we are almost there. I think we've taken quite a number of questions. I think, again, something to do with training, but I think not too relevant. So to me, I would like to wrap up the webinar. First of all, I'd like to thank all the audience for spending an hour plus to listen in, taking your time out to do this and pick up some discussions from various of the panelists. I'd like very much to thank the Oman American Business Center for making this happen. I would like to thank the panelists very much. Very, very insightful within the organization. They've shared a lot of information from their organizations very, very vividly. Thank you very much for that. And I would like also to thank Emerging Technologies for putting this together and working closely with Oman American Business Center. Without further ado, unless there's anything that I may have left out, please remind me if people are still there listening in. Thank you all. Keep safe, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Warth.
Thank you.